Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I've got a new interview for you today with Dr. Vivian Chen, who is a medical doctor from the UK with 15 years of experience, board certified in internal medicine and family practice. And she had something happened to her when her daughter was hospitalized after being born with symptoms that no one could figure out. And she took it upon herself to research and help her daughter recover. And during that process, she also realized that the chronic fatigue, acne, and brain fog that she was suffering from was due to environmental toxicity. And this opened up the world of root causes that she had never considered before as a conventional medical doctor. She now resides in the US and coaches clients back to health by helping them identify and eliminate the root causes of their disease. And she's on a mission to help people reduce their toxic load, which, as am I, because she believes that environmental toxins are one of the most important root causes that are not addressed, not talked about. Doctors are not educated in these things. And so it's pretty important to understand how environmental toxins can make an impact on your health. And it reminds me of research that I talk about often, which is that 90% of cancers are attributable to diet, lifestyle, and environment. So it's a big piece of the puzzle that is being overlooked. And it's not for lack of evidence or lack of science, it's just for lack of education. So Dr. Vivian Chen, thanks for taking the time to do this interview and share your story and talk about detoxification.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm a big fan of yours. I love your course, Square One. I refer a lot of my clients and people from my audience to your course all the time. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
That makes me so happy. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. So I'd love to start with your daughter's story because that was a major turning point in your life when your daughter got sick and it was this mysterious illness.
Yeah. So when she was born, she already had problems feeding. So I was trying to breastfeed her, and things just got worse and worse. And when she was about 8 weeks old, she had to be hospitalized because she completely stopped feeding. Up until that point, her pediatrician, her doctors told me that she had reflux because she had that typical presentation. So she would feed, she would come off, she would arch her back, and you can't speak to a baby, right? So you diagnose babies based on their symptoms. And so with that typical presentation, she was diagnosed with reflux, and she was put on reflux medications one after another to maximum dose, and nothing helped. And then things got so bad that when she stopped feeding, she got so dehydrated, she had to be hospitalized. Up until that point, I had practiced as a conventionally trained medical doctor. I was a family physician at the time, believing everything that had been trained in that paradigm of one pill for every ill. And, I never questioned anything up until that point. But, as I watched them put that tube down my daughter's through her nose, into her throat, into her stomach, and the struggle, her cry, that it just, something just snapped at me. I started to wonder, like, do I really know everything I need to know? Like, why is it that the one person I wanted to help the most in the world, I couldn't help with all those years of training? By that point, I'd already been 5 years of medical school in the UK. My board certification, I did residency in both internal medicine and family practice. So it's not like I was lazy and didn't do my work, right? I just didn't know what I was looking for. Neither did her doctor. So I actually delved into the research to try and save her life because, nobody knew what was going on with her. They started to hypothesize that she had a behavioral disorder. That was kind of like, no, I'm not taking this anymore. This is ridiculous. There is no baby with a deep behavioral disorder. And so I went back into the research, which luckily, because of my background, I, have this understanding of the human body that I can, do the research. I found a paper from 1983 that described cow's milk protein allergy, and the symptoms matched hers. And so I talked to her pediatrician to switch her milk, because by that point she was so in such a bad way that I couldn't get milk out of my diet to continue breastfeeding her, because it would take 4 weeks for milk proteins to come out of my breast milk. So we switched her to this hypoallergenic formula called Neocate, and within a week she was better.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was diagnosed with cow's milk protein allergy. And I remember speaking to her allergist and asking, why does she have this allergy? This is so strange. Like, neither my husband or I have any allergies. And the doctor said, oh, it's just one of those things, probably genetic. And I said, I just told you neither my husband or I have allergies. So why are you telling me this is genetic? Doesn't make any sense. So I think that was the beginning of my rabbit hole of digging further and further into like what I had missed at medical school. And initially started with me wanting to help my daughter recover. And thankfully now she's grown out of all her allergies. But through that process, I realized that all the symptoms that I had been told by my own doctor that was normal were not normal at all. There were root causes that were causing them. When I addressed them, I felt better. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
Well, I'm so glad you've shared it, because I know there are people watching who, everybody knows somebody with a baby. You know what I mean? There's babies are everywhere. Yeah. And I imagine most people watching maybe didn't even realize that this was a thing, right? That some babies can have a severe cow's milk protein allergy, and it can really cause them a lot of distress.
Yeah.
And what a simple thing to do to get them off of cow's milk. Yeah. And to see that, your daughter's health turn around so quickly is just remarkable. And, the thing is, we don't need a multi-million-dollar study to prove this, this is true, right?
Right.
It's exactly. I think anecdotes are powerful. They're important. I think we can learn from the experience of others. We can learn from each other. And especially when we're talking about, in this culture right now that's so hyper obsessed with science and evidence and proof, and where so much of the evidence is manufactured by the pharmaceutical industry, and a lot of it can't be trusted. We need more than ever to listen to each other, right? Especially when we're talking about things that are innocuous, like, hey, why don't you try taking cow's milk out of your child's diet? Right?
Exactly, right. I get attacked a lot by my conventional medical colleagues, get called a quack for sharing things that, so like I do have to go into the research to kind of, to argue my point and prove my point to them. But like, why should I have to prove my point, right? Like, why can't they just open their eyes to research that's already out there? Research is, is open to manipulation. You can interpret data if you already have a, preconceived hypothesis that you want to prove. You can manipulate the data. So
easily.
And, you talk about anecdotes, case studies, which are published reports, they are anecdotes and they are counted in, the hierarchy of research evidence. So I absolutely believe in the power of anecdotes, like when you have a collection of anecdotes, you have a study.
Yeah, that's right. They mean, one isolated anecdote can, obviously it's easy to be skeptical, but when the stakes are high and the risk is low, it's like, give it a let's give it a try, right? Exactly. Whether it's taking somebody off of cow's milk or trying a medicine that has never been used for a particular type of ailment, that's, to me, it's funny. It's funny that anyone would call you a quack, but not surprising. And I just want you to know how appreciated you are by actual people, right, who are looking for answers and resources and help. right? They appreciate you, and that's really all that matters. Yeah, at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. Where as long as we're helping people, right? It's like you telling people to eat more plants. How is that ever going to hurt anybody? Why would you not shed, even if there's no study and no evidence, like how is that ever going to harm anyone, right? So why
right.
would you not try it?
Something else that you mentioned that I think is important too is that the evidence is there, right? The evidence, you found a study, right? You found a study that gave you an idea to try something, and it
Right.
transformed your daughter's health. And
Yeah.
there are mounds of studies. I mean, more than one person could even read on the anti-cancer, immune boosting, antioxidant values of molecules in fruits and vegetables and herbs and spices, right? There's more research than you could ever read, but none of that is taught in med school. And so most doctors come out of med school with a completely ignorant that any of that research is out there, right?
Right. Totally, yeah. And I've learned to kind of approach my haters with love, just because that's the only way I can continue to do this work. And I do feel for them because I was in that position where I had invested so much of my life into this career and this way of thinking, this paradigm of treating patients, and then all of a sudden everything was turned upside down, and then you start to question like what you're actually doing, whether you're helping patients, and it's painful. It's really painful, and most doctors would not want to kind of branch out of into that area, and especially where your livelihood might be tested, right? Because how can you bill for telling people how to eat? Like you can't bill for that under insurance in America. So yeah, I do feel like my colleagues want to help people. It's just that there's a combination of different things, like lack of awareness, the fact that it's not taught at medical school, and they're trained in that way of thinking, plus the reluctance because it means that they may not be able to sustain their livelihood, and they have to go back on all the training that they've received. It's a painful experience to actually depart from your normal way of thinking as a doctor.
That's a good point you brought up too, that doctors obviously aren't trained in nutrition, but they also can't bill insurance for nutrition. So there's no incentive, and I mean they're actually disincentivized to learn about nutrition and help educate their patients on nutrition, because they can't file an insurance claim to be compensated for a nutritional consultation. Again,
Exactly.
this is why the healthcare system is so broken. It's not because we have bad doctors, although there is a percentage of doctors that are bad doctors, just like there's bad plumbers and bad carpenters, right? There's people in every profession that are unqualified or uncaring.
Yeah.
But even the good ones are stuck in a system that pays them really well to do a very small number of things. And most of those things don't actually produce health. They just help alleviate symptoms, right? With pharmaceuticals or whatever. So yeah, it's, I have great empathy for doctors, and I think a lot of them do have a crisis of conscience.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, sort of they have this psychological dilemma,
right?
Where if they're like, what am I doing? I've been trained to do all these things and they're not really helping. It reminds me of the integrative oncologist that helped me back in 2004 and 5, was in his 70s, and he had spent his entire career as a conventional oncologist and then retired, came back out of retirement, and decided to start using integrative therapies and non-toxic therapies like IV vitamin C. Mm-hmm. And the reason he was doing that is because he had spent his whole career doing what he was told.
Right.
And he had seen the results, and most of his patients had died, right? He was just like, he just knew like these don't, chemo, surgery, radiation, it's like, it's not really saving lives, only on very, very early stage patients. And so, yeah, he was in his 70s researching Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine. And like, just an incredible godsend. I was just so thankful for that man. But anyway, so What else did you learn as you, so that was like the sort of the tipping point for you was this, oh,
Right.
okay, cow's milk protein caused a problem in my daughter. And that sent you sort of down the rabbit hole. So what else did you learn in that process?
So initially, I was trying to find out why she was allergic because, that's, just never made sense that why she would develop an allergy when I didn't have any allergies. My husband doesn't have any allergies. And it was such a severe allergy that put her into hospital too, right? It's not just like, there's a little bit of runny nose or rash. So I then came across research that showed the effect of environmental toxins on our immune system. So that was my first kind of olive branch into the world of environmental toxins that I never learned about at medical school. And then I came across this research paper on mercury and how it dysregulates the immune system to promote the Th2, which is the allergic arm of the immune system. And I thought, my mouth is full of amalgams. And, I knew that amalgams were around 50% mercury. I know they're not silver. And, I did question, is this safe? Is this stuff safe in my mouth? But, the conventional way of thinking around amalgam is that, oh, it's safe, it doesn't vaporize and all of that. And I believed that, I believed what my conventional dentist told me when he put those in. But then because of my, me wanting to try to get to the root cause of her allergy, I started to think about whether mercury could be at the root and, whether what I was eating, like, I read about leaky gut and how food proteins could be, much bigger particles could be leaking into my bloodstream, and that could be crossing in through breast milk and eliciting an immune response in her. So all of these came together, and it's the world of environmental toxins, nutrition. I wasn't doing any of the stuff that I talk about now. So I ate the worst diet. I was I was burning candles, using perfume, like all, toxins everywhere in my house. And so slowly I started to make changes one step at a time. And, I noticed that, her slight eczema she literally just had one patch of very slight eczema behind her ear that cleared. And then I was like, oh, and then, little things, her colic got better as I, changed my diet because we because of the diet that we were eating, there was like, high sugar and all, the very high inflammatory diet. So I think all of those things contributed to her healing. And then eventually I started to feel better. Like my migraines were gone, my brain fog, my fatigue. And I thought, wow, this is powerful. Like I didn't treat myself with anything. Like there were no medications involved, but I feel so much better. And I had lived with all these symptoms for years and years, right? My labs all came back normal when I went to my doctors with brain fog, fatigue, acne, and they just told me this is normal. So yeah, I feel like my daughter was my silver lining in a way. Like that pain led me to uncover a whole world that I have been able to help myself with, and then now helping other people.
Yeah, the crisis is often the catalyst for change, right?
Yes, as with you too, right?
Yeah, definitely with me. And you mentioned blood work, which I'd love to comment on, because when a patient goes and gets blood work done, there's all these ranges, there's reference ranges for all the blood markers that they're looking at. And the ranges are very wide. These are very wide ranges. And when there was an article years ago that I read, and I can't think of the name of it at the moment, but I'll dig it up and put it in the show notes. But it was basically about the author, this was in a scientific journal, medical journal, but he was basically pointing out the fact that when the entire population is unhealthy, that normal reference ranges are unhealthy, right? So when your doctor says, "Oh, your blood work's normal," well, That sounds good, on the surface, but the problem is normal is unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
So the normal, I mean, the people that are coming in and out of the doctor's office every single day, the vast majority of them are unhealthy. And so if your blood looks like theirs, then you're actually unhealthy. So yeah, that's why so many people feel terrible, right? They have lots of symptoms of disease, of chronic disease, and their blood work looks, quote, normal. And the doctor tells them like, well, everything looks normal, right?
Right.
And then they're just confused and they don't know what to do. And they just continue on feeling bad.
Right. And you also have to know what lab to run, right? If you're not running the right labs, my doctors never ran any labs looking for toxicity in me. That's why they said I was normal. They weren't looking in the right place. It's like that parable from India, I think, where, the six blind men and the elephant. Have you heard of that one?
Yes, but please tell it. Yeah.
So, six blind men were trying to assess what an elephant is. And so the one blind man who's standing by the side of the elephant said, oh, it's just like a wall. And then the man standing by the leg said, oh, it's a tree. The one standing by the tail said, oh, it's a rope. So it depends, in conventional medicine, we're so honed in on the parts, right? And then we just say, well, that's your diagnosis, when, we really need to be stepping away and looking at the whole picture of, the human body as a whole, and then deciding what labs to run so that we don't get stuck into this, this way of like, oh, the kidney is just a kidney. It's not connected to your heart. And, now we know about the gut microbiome, for example. We know that it affects practically every part of your body. And I feel like it's not just the gut. It's like every organ communicates with another organ, or the rest of the body. And we need to stop pigeonholing symptoms into these things and start thinking what's at the root cause. Because sometimes when you address the root cause, you're actually affecting so many different symptoms at the same time.
Yeah, it's that micro versus macro approach, right? Or the expression, you're missing the forest for the trees. Like if you step back, you're looking holistically. You want to look at the whole person, the whole body. Okay, they're having a pain here or an issue there or whatever, but if you just give a drug to alleviate pain, you're not solving a problem, right? It's like they still got a problem. They don't feel it. They're not feeling it, right? It's like the old analogy about taking the light bulb out of your dashboard so you don't see the check engine light.
Eventually your car breaks down because you've been ignoring it.
Yeah, exactly. So what were some of the environmental toxins that, alarmed you in your early research? What were you learning right away that you're like, oh, this could be a problem. This is and some of those things that have stayed with you that you feel like most people don't know about?
Well, I feel like most people don't have environmental toxins on their radar, firstly. So that should be on the radar, because when you look at NHANES data, so that's the biomonitoring data done by the CDC of toxicants in American blood levels, everybody has some sort of toxicants in their blood, right? So it's a ubiquitous problem. So why are doctors not looking for it, right? When patients come into their office, it should be part of standard kind of assessment, in my opinion. But the one that I was most focused on was mercury, because I had my amalgams, and I believe that was a big part of contributing to, my leaky gut, my symptoms of migraines, brain fog, fatigue, acne, because these environmental toxins, they don't just affect one organ system. They affect processes throughout your body. So, they can affect your hormones. They can affect your gut health, cause leaky gut. They can cause, a lot of them are neurotoxins, so they can directly damage your brain cells, your nerve cells. And they go to talk a bit about root cause. They actually damage the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse, the battery inside all of our cells, right? And if you damage the battery inside the cell, that cell cannot function. It depends on where that cell is as to what your symptoms then manifest as, right? So if it's a liver cell, you can't, regulate your blood sugar properly. Your cholesterol is also out of whack. If it's a cell in your ovary or in your testicles, then you have sex hormone disturbance. Your fertility might be affected. And so I think it's because it can hide under so many different symptoms. And the key is that it's so insidious, right? We're not exposed to huge amounts. The way we typically study toxicology is that we expose these lab animals to huge doses of a substance, and then we watch for effects maybe for a day or two, maybe at the most like a month or a few months, right? It's never followed up for 10 years, 20 years. And that's at the point at which we start to see problems, because our bodies are so resilient. It's always trying to correct and make up for the mistakes and the bad things that we do to it, right? So it has that degree of give until the point where it's just like, okay, I've had enough. Like I'm not taking anymore. And then that's when you get your diagnoses. So I think that it's a hidden problem that, because you don't see that in immediate cause and effect, most people don't connect exposures with, the downstream effects. It's something that we need to kind of incorporate into our lifestyle now, I feel, given how much environmental toxins there are in our everyday lives, so that we don't test the system. And I like to talk about environmental toxins as like a bathtub. So the exposures are coming in through the faucet, and as long as the drain is working properly, you don't, that bathtub never overfills, right? It's only when it overfills that you start to get symptoms and diseases. So we need to make sure that whatever's coming in through the faucet is reduced, and also that we have a clear drainage system, which is detoxification.
So what are the tests that you like to do that you recommend? I mean, obviously, probably a heavy metals test is going to be at the top of the list.
It actually really depends on the symptoms and the exposure. So I take a very careful lifestyle history. So I have like a toxin questionnaire that I have my clients fill out, because that then tells me where to look for, and what to look for. So, for example, if they tell me I eat, sushi 3-4 times a week, I have dental amalgams, then Mercury is going to be high up on the list. And, it depends on their occupation as well. Are they a painter? I mean, I know lead is now out of our paint, but, when they're scraping off paint from old houses, they may be inhaling lead and things like that. So a lot depends on the symptoms. I mean, there's just so many different tests for different toxins out there. But there are some good kind of overall surrogate markers that you can run in your blood to tell you whether there may be a disturbance. So, for example, your liver function, particularly ALT, which is a liver marker, that can start to derange very early on. But, as you said, back to your original point about ranges, that range is huge, right? And, the acceptable level, depending on what lab you run, but generally, anything up to 35 or 50 is acceptable. But really, if you have a high toxic load, derangement can, might look like 20. But then your doctor will say, well, your normal is fine, everything's fine. But it's not. You've got to compare it to what your, baseline level is. Maybe it was 5, and 5 going to 10 is significant, right? And then there's gamma GT as well. That's a very sensitive marker for toxicants. So if you actually drink a glass of wine and you go and get your gamma GT done the next day, it will be deranged. So that's quite a sensitive one.
Wow.
For anything that can impact your liver. And then there's also urinary markers, like urinary markers of oxidative stress, because ultimately what these toxins do is that they cause oxidative stress, which is an imbalance of free radicals and antioxidants in our body, right? Free radicals are things that damage our DNA, our cells. These can lead to cancer down the line. So we don't want these free radicals in our body, but they are normally produced as part of respiration, as part of metabolism in the mitochondria. So that's why we have an antioxidant system and antioxidants in our diet to try and mop those up. But environmental toxins actually cause a rise in your free radicals. And so if you don't have enough antioxidants to mop them up, they start to cause inflammation, oxidative damage. And there is a marker called 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine. It's a mouthful, but it's 8-OHDG. That's the kind of abbreviation we use. And if that starts to go up, that tells you that the environmental toxins are now causing some kind of damage in your body. So my levels of that was super high, even though I was supposedly eating a very healthy diet, but the amount of toxicity in my body was causing so much oxidative stress that the antioxidants just wasn't enough anymore. And other than that, you can look for inflammation, and then beyond that, you really need to be looking at specific toxicants.
Are there specific toxins that you are seeing regularly, like, for example, mercury, aluminum, even glyphosate, or PCBs?
All of them. All of them. Sadly, I shouldn't be laughing. It's unfortunate, but
what's the short list of the big ones?
Lead is surprisingly common, especially I'm just seeing a lot of ladies who are postmenopausal come to me with a high lead level. And I feel like it may be like the cumulative exposure, because we store lead in our bones. And after menopause, you start to get more bone kind of turnover where bone is released. And that's why a lot of postmenopausal women can have osteoporosis, right? So the lead is released from the store in bone, and that's why they start to get high levels. So I'm seeing lead, I'm seeing definitely glyphosate. Everybody I test for glyphosate in the US is high. And I myself, I eat mostly organic. I don't eat all organic, but I eat mostly organic. And when I tested myself, I was on a 75th centile. And Chris, that's on a population of people who live in the US who are exposed. So it's kind of scary.
So you were in basically the 75th percentile means that only 25% of the people had less glyphosate than you. Is that right?
Yeah. And it's scary, right? When you think about how...
And this was when you were first figuring things out, or was this a recent test?
This is now. So I check my levels every year, and it goes up and down, but I've never got to like below 50th centile for glyphosate. And I do live in California, so I think it's just in the air even.
That's wild. I recently interviewed Dr. Stephanie Seneff, who wrote a book on glyphosate, and she's an MIT 40, 50-year research scientist. I mean, just brilliant woman. And wrote a book on glyphosate. And it was pretty alarming, some of the things she talked about in her interview. And I've never had a glyphosate test. And now I really want to get one because, even I'm not 100% organic now. I mean, when I eat out, I eat vegetables and plant-based, but I'm not exclusively eating only organic food, especially when I eat in a restaurant. Most restaurants aren't all organic anyway.
That's right.
Or even have any organic food. Yeah. So it makes me very curious about that. And it's something I'm going to do. Yeah.
I think it gets to a point though, where, when I first started my non-toxic living journey, I was kind of quite careful with everything, but then now it can become a stress in and of itself too. Sure. So, I like that you say you eat out and you enjoy your food without worrying, because I feel like, most of us are living in that sympathetic dominant state in the modern world, especially nowadays, like with, everybody trying to cause division everywhere. But
and by sympathetic dominant, you mean stressed.
Right. Yeah. We're chronically stressed. And so we need to tell our bodies that we're safe, right? Like you don't want to be like, oh no, I mustn't touch this, because it's a toxicant, it's going to cause damage in my body. I feel like the mind ultimately is the conductor of the orchestra. The orchestra is our body, like the organs are different instruments. And then the mind, the conductor, is in charge of all the organs. So it's important what we tell ourselves as well, right? So, we want to be careful, but we don't want to be extreme to the point where then we can't enjoy our lives and then we're stressed out.
I totally agree. And I like to call it food fear, which is it's not a healthy state emotionally and psychologically to be in a state of food fear. And I've been there, and it's a delicate, there's a delicate balance there, because when you have cancer, and of course my message to cancer patients is to eat 100% organic and all plant-based for a season, for your most intensive season of healing, and to be 100% committed to that, because your life's at stake, right? But at the same time, I'm also very cautious and conscientious about not putting people into a state of fear, right? Into this food fear. Yeah. So, and again, like I said, it's a delicate balance, right? Because the stakes are high and it really is important. But I think once you study and research and you educate yourself and you feel confident in your choices, then you can make good food choices without it being motivated or driven by fear, right?
Yes.
And I think if I'm doing anything right, hopefully it is to get people excited about eating super healthy, right? Not to scare them into doing it, but to get them excited. It's a totally different emotion, right? Excitement and confidence and joy in taking care of themselves like they never have before is really what my mission is, versus like just trying to scare people all the time out of not to eat junk food. Right?
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. We don't want to come from a place of fear, because that automatically puts your body into that stressed out sympathetic dominant state, which then affects your digestion. You can't even absorb the food that you're eating then, right? So fear is not where we want to be.
I think the best use of fear is, and I talk about this in one of my books, is to channel fear into positive action.
Yes.
Right. And not let it paralyze you, but just to take just a little bit of, fear of being sick or fear of cancer recurrence or, whatever, just channel that into positive action to take care of yourself. Absolutely. And then, it's like, you're like a transformer, you're transforming energy, and if from AC to DC or whatever, right? So, we all have the power to do that, is to take a negative energy and fear and transform it into something positive.
I love that. I love that so much. We need that, especially now.
Yes, we do. It's an everyday fight now. I'm trying to push a lot of hope and encouragement and facts and optimism into the world right now, so that people are not just in this constant state of fear, because the fear mongering is at unprecedented levels.
Right.
Unfortunately,
I'm not allowed to talk about how food can help our immune system anymore.
You're accused of misinformation, medical misinformation, quackery. Like, this is dangerous to tell someone they can strengthen their immune system. They can support their immune system.
Eat garlic, because there's actually studies that show it can, boost their natural killer cell function. But no, you're not allowed to talk about it. Anyway, that's the we got to keep doing our work, and at least I'm very grateful you have an audience, I have an audience. At least we're helping the people who want to listen to us.
Yeah, and this is a powerful message, because at the end of the day, your choices can create health or disease, right? And if you take responsibility for your life and your health, and you decide to educate yourself instead of just being told what to do, right? That you take it upon yourself to read and research and learn and make up your own mind, right? After listening to lots of different sources and opinions, you set yourself up for success. You empower yourself with knowledge that you can make the best decision for you. And that's that's the best feeling in the world, to realize, I'm not dependent on the government to tell me how to be healthy. Like I've learned how. And I've learned how by listening to other healthy people and other doctors and researchers and experts who are also living in vibrant health. Right.
Yeah.
That's who I'm learning from. And still, right, like yourself, I'm learning from you. I'm constantly learning. I haven't got it all figured out, but 17 years under my belt, I've learned a few things.
Yeah, we all learn from each. I mean, what you've done is incredible. Like 13, did you say 13 years cancer-free now?
17.
17. Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. You're such an inspiration.
Thank you. I'm just glad to be here. I'm blessed. I'm just so glad to be able to do what I do, and hopefully, encourage people and be a light in the dark. And that's just what I'm trying to do. Be a light in the dark for folks, and give them hope, and not just this sort of like Hallmark card hope, but the hope that they can heal through deliberate action and the resources that they can incorporate into their life to take that action. So yeah, it's more than just like, you can do it, right? Yeah. It's like, right. Yes, you can do it. Here's how to do it. You must do it. Right. Yeah. But at least here's where to start.
That's why your course are so powerful, because you do give those tools and you tell them about the mindset, which I love. Thank
you. So I'd like to pick your brain some more. Okay. So we've talked about some of the big toxins and, glyphosate and heavy metals. And do you do testing like parasite testing, things like that?
Parasite is very difficult to test for. So traditionally, in the conventional setting, we have stool tests, but it's just notoriously inaccurate for parasites. And even like the functional testing, like, PCR, parasites hide. That's what they do, right? They don't want to be found. So I think a lot of it's actually on a careful history, like you listening to your clients and your patients and figuring out whether they have this issue. And in conventional medicine, we actually just used to do empirical treatment, meaning we give a dose of mebendazole, which is a medication to treat
antiparasitic.
Yeah, and then if their symptoms go away, that's a diagnosis and treatment together, and then we follow up with another dose a week later. So parasites are really difficult to find. And I feel like a good history. And the thing that I want to kind of highlight is that parasites are not always bad, right? Parasites can be part of our normal gut microbiome. It's just that when they overgrow or you have, there's an imbalance. So it's all about balance in your microbiome. They're trialing parasite therapy for ulcerative colitis, so inflammatory bowel disease right now, because there's certain worms I think they found that can shift your immune system away from the autoimmune. So it's really, really interesting.
That is.
It's about the balance of the microbiome, and that then can impact and modulate in your immune system. So I'm not one of those that just thinks every single parasite, there's opportunistic organisms in your gut microbiome, like Candida can be a normal part of your microbiome, right? It's only when it overgrows that's an issue. So the key is to prevent it overgrowing in the first place, and not just like, oh, I have Candida, kill. I have Candida, kill, right? You see these people who've taken multiple courses of anti-Candida therapy or for rifaximin for SIBO, and they don't get better because they're not addressing the underlying root cause.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what else have you uncovered? What's probably the most surprising thing that you've learned as you've sort of gone down this road of functional medicine and holistic health?
I think that the biggest surprise was that environmental toxins can affect us so much.
And how pervasive they are.
Right. It was just, every step of the way, like my jaw would just drop to the floor with everything I was reading, like how unregulated environmental toxins are in the US. 85,000 chemicals approved or registered for use, and only a very small percentage have ever been studied for safety in humans, right? So, I mean, that's insane, and it's everywhere. And the fact that these chemicals, when they're released and used, they get released into our environment, and we can't get it back. It's in our environment. A lot of them persist, and they just recycle, and then now we're in a situation where it's difficult to get away from these. Like the glyphosate situation. There's probably glyphosate in my rainwater now in California because of how much somebody else is using, at a farm, I don't know, 100 miles away from me. It's carried over to me. So I feel like the biggest realization is that we're all connected, and everything is connected in the world. And what we really need to be doing is being mindful of, our choices, because what we choose to spend our money on supports the businesses, which then, it tells them if we don't want glyphosate and we don't, stop buying them, there's not going to be a business anymore, right? That's why Costco carries so many organic items now. It's because of us.
The demand.
Right. So we firstly, I feel like, so when I first made the realization that we're all connected and that, it's got to be top-down approach, I felt very helpless because it's kind of like, what can I do, right? I'm not going to be able to affect policy change. Like, I'm not going to be able to tell the government, hey, ban all of these chemicals. But then I realized that point that we just discussed, which is that what I do can have a very wide impact on, what businesses decide to do, and then we start to share with our friends and family. That's so powerful. Like the ripple effect can be huge, right? And then we start a movement where the business are now, like, look at the beauty industry. It's now all, cruelty-free vegan and non-toxic, right? Non-toxic everywhere on these shampoo bottles now, because they know consumers are looking for it. We are raising standards that way. So I feel like that, that was my realization, is that we need to be doing, we can be supporting our own detox systems because we are exposed every day. That's always a good thing to do. And what you talk about with plant-based eating, that's probably the best way to support our detox organs. But other than that, we got to reduce how much there is in our environment, because we can't, we can't detox if we are constantly exposed, right? And that's probably...
And it really is. It doesn't have to be complicated. Something that I find myself saying all the time is that the biggest key to detoxification is to stop toxifying, right? Like, you got to stop the input, right? You don't need to go buy a detox kit or a crash course or a supplement if you're not willing to stop putting toxic stuff in your mouth and on your body and into the air in your home, like burning incense and air fresheners and stuff like that. And even just using a lot of harsh chemical cleaning products or laundry products and things. So there's this sort of, systematic shift that any person can make, where you start buying non-toxic home care products, non-toxic body care products, eating fruits and vegetables, but preferably mostly organic will help a lot. Okay. And so, again, these are all things that any person can do. You can filter your drinking water. You can have some air filters in your home, like things like that. And they all contribute. They all add up.
Yeah, it's amazing what transformation you can experience from those little steps, because it's about the cumulative the addition of everything. And we don't know whether these toxins actually interact with each other synergistically inside of our bodies too, right? Because when we study toxicology, it's just one toxicant at a time. And, there's now evidence coming through that some of them actually can enhance the damage of the other one.
Absolutely. They're not giving the rats 20 or 30 different chemical compounds at the same time. They're not in a toxic soup like we are now
Yeah.
where we're breathing in some toxic fumes, we're eating all kinds of artificial flavors, colors, additives, preservatives,
Yeah.
and pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, right?
Right.
Lead,
Yeah.
mercury, aluminum, right? And then we're putting lead and aluminum and PCBs on our skin,
Right.
makeup, lipstick, those kind of things. And it's like, yeah, there's no real studies on that other than studies on humans where they're just doing a comprehensive profile on a human's toxic level, and they're saying, okay, what all can we find in this person?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't
And there's
think
definitely
any.
studies out there like that.
Right. And we don't know. That's the thing. And, there's preliminary research. For example, Stephanie Senov actually showed that glyphosate can increase the absorption and the distribution of aluminum into your brain. So, these things, I feel like they probably act synergistically in our bodies. And that's why, that dose is the poison thing. It may not be true when it's minuscule. And by the way, talking about ranges again, take an example of lead. Like we allow, I think now it's 5 is the safe lead level in your blood. Like, why should we even allow any lead? Like, how is even like a minuscule amount of lead safe? Like our bodies are not designed to operate with all these chemicals, like in this toxicant soup in the bloodstream, right? So these toxicants actually go and bind onto enzymes. They bind onto our protein. They change the shape of our protein. They change our DNA. The body is just like, I feel like when there's disease, the body is just trying to protect it. It's trying to do something to it's kind of like an obstacle course. It's trying to like move around these obstacles. And then sometimes you get symptoms because body's trying to like get rid of these toxins, like autoimmunity, for example. Like, why is the immune system so riled up? Like, it doesn't do that for no reason, right? There's something triggering it to, it could be, we know that from studies that mercury can also be linked to autoimmunity. And it may be like the immune system's just like, hey, I don't like this thing, mercury. I want to get rid of it. And the way it gets rid of it is by ramping up the immune reaction. And then as a result, you get autoimmunity because the body's trying to get rid of something else. But we don't realize that because we're not looking at it.
The mercury one's a good, it's reminds me, I mentioned this in my first book, but I was surprised to learn that over the years, the EPA has continually increased the level of mercury allowed in fish because the mercury levels in fish kept rising. So like year after year, as they were studying and testing, the levels kept rising and rising. Eventually, they just stopped testing, right? They used to say, okay, this much is allowed. If it's over this, it's too much. Eventually, they just kind of threw up their hands. They're like, it's everywhere. Oh, well, I mean,
Everywhere.
it's either
So if
don't
we
eat
set a
fish at
standard,
all.
yeah, you're not going to be able to eat any fish. So let's just not measure it.
Yeah. And I think
hiding your head in the sand, right?
I think the public needs to be aware. This is the same kind of thing as the blood work conversation we had earlier, is as people get more and more unhealthy, more and more toxic, then what's considered healthy is going to keep following that group, right? It's going to keep shifting. And so this healthy range is going to keep shifting further and further into unhealthy. And we're going to have a whole generation of doctors scratching their heads. They already are, I guess, presumably now, as to why so many people are so unwell. And because they're told, no, that these people are normal, right? They're healthy. And then again, like yourself, they're not going to be trained in, well, wait a minute, what are the other potential causes of this disease, right? Environmental toxins, mercury, lead, arsenic, aluminum, glyphosate, PCBs, and on and on. And I really hope, but I am encouraged though, because I feel like there's more physicians like yourself that are enlightened and are sort of defecting, so to speak, right, to the holistic health world and the functional medicine world. And so the numbers of functional medicine practitioners are growing, which is fantastic. And the amount of organic food that's available is I mean, when I had cancer, there was only one place in town I could get organic produce. One Whole Foods in Memphis. That was it. And now, like you said, Costco and Walmart, Target, I mean, Kroger, of course, they all have tons of organic produce. So like good things are happening, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
For
and
sure.
I think, I mean, I feel hopeful that we're making progress, even though there's still a lot of sick people walking around that, they just need to hear this message.
Yeah. And, I think I want to pick up on a point you mentioned earlier about picking up a detox kit, is that if you are worried about your toxicity level, detox kits are not the answer to reducing that level. Like Chris said, the first thing to do is to minimize your exposure. Now, we can't minimize exposure 100% of the time. So at the same time, we need to support the detox organs so that they can, move those toxins out of our bodies efficiently. And, the way you do that is not through detox kits, because we have these organs inside of us that already can do that job. It's just that, most of us are micronutrient deficient. We are in that stressed out sympathetic dominant state, which means that detox organs are shut down, right? Like detox organs are not going to function when you're trying to run away from a tiger, which is what this stress response is telling your body. And so, I think if you work on your nutrition and opening up and supporting your body with nutrients and, putting your body in a healing state.
Of course, exercise should be mentioned, and sweat.
There's some different aspects to that.
Yeah. And again, simple things, right? Tons of fruits and vegetables, getting away from stressful media and information and living a life of joy and peace. And taking care of yourself and exercising, getting sunshine and sweating, spending time in nature. Again, these are all things that pretty much anyone can do. And detoxification is something that, a cleanse, a 7-day cleanse or a 3-day cleanse, it ain't going to do it for you. If you really are serious about detoxification, you have to change your life and your lifestyle.
Yeah. So detox is actually an active process requiring energy and a lot of different nutrients. So if you do a cleanse or you do a juice fast, what you're doing is just avoiding the traditional like inflammatory foods for a week. And of course, you're going to feel better. You're going to drop pounds, but you're not detoxing, right? Detoxing means supporting your liver, sweating, like what you said, exercise, sleeping. When you're sleeping, you're detoxing, your brain is detoxing. And I've actually seen so many people have detox reactions. And, at best, it's just like, I feel a little bit dizzy or I have a little bit of rash, but it can actually, if you mobilize a body store of a lot of toxins, let's say mercury, and a lot of people jump in and say, oh, yeah, I read that cilantro or chlorella can bind mercury. So let me take a ton of that to try and get rid of mercury. But what they're doing is just pulling out mercury from stored body tissue. And then now it's in your bloodstream, right? And what does it have to do? It has to come out of your body somehow. And it can come out through your sweat, through your poop, or your urine. If those 3 pathways are blocked, mercury can't come out. You end up with a high blood level. And now it's like, trying to force its way out. It might go into the kidney and jam up the kidney. It can be associated with kidney failure. So it's not always safe just to jump into these binders and supplements that, people try to sell you to bind onto heavy metals when you haven't even done the basic work of just opening up your detox pathways to let the toxins get out of your body.
That's such a good message. I think, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's really important. One of the things that I found in researching years ago that I thought was so fascinating was that there's a lot of heavy metals, a number of them that are preferentially detoxed in sweat more than anything else. Yeah. And for example, aluminum, cadmium, uranium, lead, mercury, a little bit more in sweat than urine, but some of these are, 10, 20, 30 times more excretion in sweat. Yeah. Right. And so if you're not exercising, if you're not sweating, then you really are not detoxifying, right? There's some of it's coming out in your pee, but most of it is that should be coming out in your sweat is not. And so it's just another reason to like make exercise a priority in your life.
Yeah,
It really is good. It's more than just looking good on the beach or looking, looking better in your jeans or whatever, right? You're actually detoxifying your body when you exercise and sweat.
Absolutely. When you exercise, you actually boost glutathione levels as well. And glutathione is the master antioxidant. It's kind of like the magnet that goes around and, attaches to the toxins and brings it out of the body. So it's a really good way to detoxify, I agree. And the other thing I feel like a lot of people don't do before they jump into like a detox kit is pooping, right? They're not pooping regularly.
Yeah, if you're constipated, that's a problem.
Yeah. So whatever you're taking is binding onto toxins, and now it's like in your body and it can't come out. And, studies have shown that, up to 90% of toxins like mercury can be reabsorbed in your gut. If you're not pooping, these toxins that you think you're detoxifying from are just being reabsorbed, and they're just, what's doing is that you're just stirring it up and it's just not coming out. And actually, when you're stirring things up, it can cause more harm than good. So you absolutely have to be pooping, sweating, exercising, sleeping, and peeing before you even think about taking binders and, stuff that actually, brings the body store of toxins out.
And eating lots of fruits and vegetables too, it adds to that because you've got all these wonderful antioxidants that can neutralize free radicals that are being released, and toxins that are being released, bind to them or neutralize them in the process. So it all works together. It's just, there's a beautiful synergy there in just basic healthy living. That's what I get excited about, the simple things, because they're
simple. Yeah,
they're the most powerful, and they have the most profound effects in your body. And you don't need to spend a ridiculous amount of money on retreats or supplements or whatever. You just need to be willing to change your life and create new habits for yourself and stick with them, and you will develop a momentum, right? Healing takes time. And as you get going and you continue to go, it's like riding a bicycle. Once you start pedaling, it's easy to just keep the wheels turning, right? And you just get this healing momentum going day by day as you continue to take care of yourself, and you will get better and better. You just got to stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I feel like once you start feeling better, that's more momentum for you, right? To keep going. So a lot of my friends are like, do you want to live until you're 100? And I was like, well, it's not about living to 100. I just don't want to be sick and not live my life to the fullest. Like, I don't want to live like how I was in my 20s anymore. I wasn't thriving. I wasn't the best version of myself, right? I couldn't do the things I wanted to do with my life. That's not living, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. Is the quality of life is about health span and not about lifespan for me.
And health span is the number of healthy years. I mean, we all know people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that are just debilitated, They're just limping around. They're in poor health. And it's like, I am 44 and I want to be thriving when I'm in my 60s and 70s and 80s. I want to feel good. It'd be cool to make it to 100, but I don't know how much life I have to live, but I do know that the choices that I make today produce health tomorrow. And that's why I make the choices I make. And so it's like, I could die in a car wreck, right? Tomorrow, but I'm living my life in a way that is planning for the future. Yeah. And I'm planning and taking care of myself so that I won't be debilitated when I'm a senior citizen. That's the goal.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, Dr. Chen, this has been really fun. I'm so glad that you are out there. Every time I stumble across a holistically minded medical doctor, I just get so excited. And I'm just glad that you're doing what you're doing and helping patients at the highest level, helping them solve their root cause problems, get to the root cause of their diseases, get their health back. Where can people find you? Because I know you do one-on-one coaching and you have resources and things to share.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a website. It's www.plateforhealth.com. So that's PLATEFUL health, HEALTH.com.
Got it. Plateforhealth.com.
Yeah, plateforhealth.com. So health through your plate. That's the meaning behind that. And then I'm very active on Instagram as well. So my handle there is at plateful.health. And then I have a email list. I have lots of free resources on my website, so please go check it out. I have a quiz. I shared that with you on if you're worried whether you might have high toxicity, you can take the quiz and find out. And I have a 5-day free course that teaches you the basics of detox so you can do it right instead of jumping into a detox kit.
That's great. I love it. And we'll put links to all of those resources in the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast or you're on YouTube, you can click through to chrisbeatcancer.com and to the show notes there and connect with Dr. Chen. Any final words, any closing thoughts?
No, just that if you're here listening to this, I just want to say congratulations and well done for, investing time in your health. And, thank you, Chris, for doing all the amazing work and helping people be empowered in this way, right? Like you said, empowerment through information and knowledge is the best gift you can give to yourself for health. And once you have that power back, you can stick to the changes little bit at a time. And over time, you will heal. Like our bodies are designed to be healthy. We're not designed to be sick and need medications. We're designed to heal. Like we just need to remove the obstacles and the body will do its job magically.
I love it. Take back your health. Well, Dr. Vivian Chen, thank you again. Thank you everybody for watching. Please like and share this video with people you care about. It's a great message. Again, you can get well. Your body is designed to heal. It wants to be healthy. And there's things that you can do. So many simple things that you can do to help yourself heal and maintain optimal health. So we're just going to keep on keeping on. And thanks again for watching. See ya.
Thank you, everyone.